Hello everybody. As you may know, Kate and I have started up the Campbeltown Whisky Company with the plan to bottle our own whisky under the Whisky brand. Obviously in current climes things have slowed down a little bit for us. We had intended to be doing lots of tastings in Campbeltown over the next 6 months, year or so, to try and, well, let's be honest, to try and get some money in to help fund the project, and obviously that's fallen by the wayside. So we thought we'd do a few videos with some drams that we were going to do in the meantime. This is basically tenuous links to Campbeltown is what the tasting's all about. We're going to do one dram tonight, which there's not that much left of it, as you can see. This is a 25-year-old Craigellachie from single malts of Scotland. That's the Whisky Exchange, chosen by, well, this one doesn't have his name on it. I was thinking this one had Ollie's name on it, but no, it doesn't. But chosen by the guys at Speciality Drinks. This was the bottle that I actually opened on Hogmanay this year, and me and my mum made quite a dent in it. I just think this is a really good dram. Yeah, so we've got a Craigellachie, 25-year-old, February, 20th February, if that makes any difference, 1994, bottled 28th of February, 1999, 2019, making it exactly 25 years old. So they got that as soon as they could. Bottled at cask strength, 56.1% ABV. One of 195 bottles. I say I tried this, loved it, so it's a good excuse to try it. Obviously natural cask strength, non-chill filtered and natural colour. Cracking nose, nice and sweet, fruity. Obviously all whiskey's fruity. Yeah, well, not all whiskey's fruity, but you know where I'm going. Obviously, another thing I'd like to point out is the glass. Perfect measured glass. I think this is one of the best glasses on the market. Sounds like I'm doing a pitch for the Whisky Exchange at the minute, but hey ho, they're good guys. But I think this possibly is the best glass to come out since the Glencairn, in my opinion. I do like the 1920s blender's glass, but for high strength newer whiskies it's a bit too intense. But that's beside the point. Anyway, I'm speaking about Craigellachie, haven't I? The reason we went with the Craigellachie is that there is a link to Campbeltown. Peter Mackey, who owned Craigellachie Distillery and Malt Mill and Lagavulin, you might have heard of Lagavulin. I also owned Hazelburn Distillery, which was over there a wee bit. Although in Campbeltown pretty much everything was over there a wee bit, or over there. And in 1922, possibly the largest shipment of whisky ever made, it came from Craigellachie to Campbeltown. There was 2,240 hoggies, mainly hoggies. Took 8 trains from Craigellachie, back in the day when they had trains, to Lossiemouth, and then got in 2 boats and sailed all the way down here. We stored at Hazelburn, probably in the bond next to where Tesco is now. So that's the tenuous link as to why we're doing this. I would say, MD, if you can find this whisky, go and buy it. It's really cracking. Lovely mouthfeel. Got that kind of old school fruits to it. A bit of lemon. Obviously I've got to say bananas, because no matter what tasting note would be complete without bananas. A little bit of alcohol there, which, believe it or not, this is my first dram of the day, so that's why it's there, but it's not overpowering, and just a lovely mouthfeel. The other obvious links to Craigellachie being well, I was born there. Many people believe I was born at Macallan. That's a complete lie. I was born in a hospital in Elgin, and then was living in Craigellachie and moved to Macallan, which is also kind of close to Craigellachie, when I was 18 months old. So don't believe everything you read on the internet. So this I like. Hopefully someday we'll be bottling stuff as good as this. Although I may imagine it'll be a few years before we're able to afford to bottle 25-year-old whiskey. But you never know. So yeah, as I said, born to Craigellachie, 18-month-old, moved to Macallan. Although if you look at a bottle of Macallan, it will say Highland malt whiskey, distilled, from Craigellachie. So always bear that in mind. Other links to Craigellachie is I first got into whiskey because of Duncan Elphick at the Craigellachie Hotel. When I got the job in the Quake Bar, at that time I think it had 700-800 single malts on the shelf, all customer side. Pretty much the only reason I got the job was because I could reach top shelf, and that's where I really got into whiskey, because most of the whiskey industry at that time used the hotel. So you'd maybe have Glenfarclas in one corner, William Grant's in the other corner, Macallan in the other corner, and there was only 3 corners really in the bar. And so that's where I really got into whiskey, something there. Also learned to drink in Craigellachie, so Craigellachie's got a lot to answer for. Highland Inn, obviously, one of the greatest whiskey bars, is in Craigellachie. Technically been going to that bar since I was 8 years old. My big brother used to pick me up from Sunday school and we'd go to the Highlander, the honky as we knew it, for a pint. Obviously I didn't have a pint at 8 years old. That would have been wrong. Yeah, so Craigellachie's got a lot to answer for us. Met lots of great people at working at the Craigellachie Hotel. Many of you know Hans O'Fringer. He wrote this book, The Road to Craigellachie. I do have it in English somewhere. And if you read this book, it's all about his time staying at the Craigellachie Hotel. Throughout it, he mentions the barman. Never mentions the barman by name, but it's me. It's one of the things that I always bring up with him, that he should really have mentioned me by name, but never did. Back to the dram. Stunning. Just opening up now. Lovely thick nose to it. Yeah, so, and if I hadn't been working in the Craigellachie Hotel, probably wouldn't have got into the whiskey industry. I wouldn't have got to go to Japan with Duncan Elphick when they did that, and subsequent jobs, and then ended up here with Kate, obviously. Kate is being too shy to come on camera today, but she's blaming being pregnant so she can't drink, but she'll get her turn shortly. We'll maybe do a Glenfarclas or something that Kate can speak about. Kate's much better at the local knowledge in Campbeltown anyway, so we'll get her involved soon. She's shaking her head, but we'll get there. So that's really about it. Craigellachie. Really pleased when I saw the relaunch of Craigellachie a few years back as part of the last Great Drams series that Dewar's came out with, because it's always been a particular favourite dram of mine, obviously living close by. Used to love the 14-year-old Flora and Fauna bottling that was out. Used to be able to buy that really cheap back in the day. Don't have any left, unfortunately. I actually gave my last bottle to David Stark, but that's beside the point. And it was a great dram, so it was great to see Craigellachie getting getting some of the recognition that it deserves. I think that's about all my Craigellachie stories that I can say for now. So make sure you look out for this dram and any other Craigellachies. It's one of those underrated drams, you know, that people are beginning to discover now. I've bottled some belters over the years. Also, I remember one in particular when I was at Duncan Taylor. Myself and Stuart Robertson discovered this cask of peated Craigellachie. I think it was just the cask that had been peated, and it really took us by surprise. And it's a dram that I think people are beginning to warm to. You know, it's in the ilk possibly of an imperial if it's given age and things like that, but because the distillery is still open, it's relatively more affordable. So let's hope they don't close Craigellachie and we can still keep getting drams like this. Not that there's any worry about Craigellachie closing before we say anything. We start any rumours. Anyway, cheers.